I want to congratulate Matthew off the top for having his first #1 bestseller.
And I just wanted to say what a warm welcome to a fellow Canadian. Very nice to be back here.
It's lovely to have you. I've been looking forward to this. Congratulations on the book. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
How's the process been of just talking about it? How have you
It's
found
been, what it's all about is helping people, and I've heard already 5 stories of people that read the book and checked into treatment.
Well, I thought what we could do is kind of start from the beginning.
Have a drink? Should we just have a drink?
Yeah, why not? Good idea. The book is called Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. And the big terrible thing is, of course, your struggles with addiction over the years that you talk about in this book. It's a dark book. It's a real book. It's a very funny book. But again, there's reality there and there's darkness there. And I want to start kind of where all that began, which is the first time you had a drink. You write about.
Yeah.
You were 14 in the backyard somewhere in Ontario, right?
Ottawa.
You were with a couple of buddies. What do you remember from that night?
That was pretty heavy. I was with my best friends, the Murray brothers, and we decided, we didn't know what we were doing, and they got some beers, and I got a bottle of wine called Anwar's Baby Duck, was the name of it. And I drank the entire bottle and lay in the ground and looked at the skies and just felt better than I ever had in my entire life. And I thought to myself, this is probably what normal people feel like all the time.
Well, who were normal people?
You. No. People who just walked the face of the earth, people. And I finally felt at home for the very first time. As soon as I drank alcohol, I just loved it, and I had a much different reaction than the Murrays did, and I had a much different reaction than normal people have. Normal people have a drink and they feel a little, woozy, and then they, go home and go to work. I have a drink, and for the first time in 3 weeks, life seems to make sense. And why would you not want to drink if that happened to you all the time,
So you realized in that moment that other people seem to be responding to booze this way, and I'm responding in a different way.
Yes, but I didn't understand it at all because I was 14 years old, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I just knew I had some issue with this thing, and it's a progressive disease, so it gets worse and worse as you get older. So you'd think I would have a drink the very next night, but I didn't. And then, as I was like 18, 19, 20, then it really started to kick in. I was drinking every night. It was a secret. I would drink with my pals. I would race to a liquor store at 1:45 so I could have alcohol at my house and drink more than I did with my friends. And it just became this roller coaster ride that I didn't understand.
But even at the beginning, Matthew, you talk about how, even when you were a little baby, you still had an experience with pills.
It's tough because I'm going to tell you a story, and I don't blame my parents at all for this, and you'll see why. But I was a colicky kid, and I used to cry all the time, and I was constantly crying. And my parents took me to a doctor, and he was an older doctor, and he wore a white coat, and he said, if your baby's crying, just give him this. And they said, okay. And it was phenobarbital, which is a major barbiturate and a very addictive thing. And I was 30 days old. And they gave it to me for 30 days. So from 30 to 60, and there's pictures of me looking like knocked out. Like my face was all squinched. I was like, and they would laugh because, stone babies are fun, I guess. But I know that it affected my sleep forever. I don't really sleep that well, and I'm pretty sure it's because of that. But if I was a parent and it was 1970 and I was given this by a doctor and the baby stopped crying, I would do it too. But, now it's like, well, you fucking crazy?
But what do you feel when you start disclosing that kind of thing in the book? Like what occurred to you when you heard that story about when you were a baby?
It was an interesting thing. Writing the book was pretty easy. Writing the book, it was like cleansing. It was like a wonderful experience. I just wrote all these terrible things. I got them down on the page, and but reading it was almost impossible. It was like I disassociated a little bit, and I looked at this book, which I had to read because I had to do the audio the next day.
Oh, you had to do it out loud.
And I had to do it out loud, yeah. But I looked at the book, and I was just like, this guy has had like the most torturous life. I can't believe it. And then I realized it was me that I was talking about. And, you know, it was, I literally had to sleep in a different room. I was working on a laptop, and I moved the laptop into my living room so I could sleep that night because it was so powerfully dark, and for so long I didn't know what was going on. I do now. And that's why the best thing about me is I can help people if they ask me to. Yeah, I can. Wonderful things have happened in my life. I'm incredibly grateful for all of them, but that's the ticket for me, is helping people on a large scale or helping, you know, one guy and seeing the light turn on and him understanding what is happening. Yeah. Because that's the problem. You don't know what's happening. You can't share it with anybody because something's wrong, and they might make you stop, which you don't want to do. Yeah. You know, a friend of mine said, you know, if you're drinking and like the police came to your door and said, if you drink tonight, we're going to take you to jail. Yeah. You'd start packing for jail because you have to drink. You can't not drink. Yeah. You know. And the other thing, man, is I didn't want this, and I didn't want to have this problem. You know. No. And it's so cunning, baffling, and powerful, alcoholism and addiction. And you know, a lot of people say, because the reason this book has done so well and been taken into the hearts of so many people is because everybody's starting to know or have addiction in their life. People have a brother or a sister or a grandfather or a close friend who has addiction in their life, and they need to know from the addict's point of view, in this case me, how horrible it is and how they're not weak. We're not weak. I'm a pretty strong, resilient guy. But it has nothing to do with weakness. It's a disease that we have, and we don't know that we have it. And if somebody says, just stop, you know, you want to punch them in the face because they don't know, you know. Nancy Reagan had this slogan that said, just say no.
Just say no, yeah.
And you're like, well, idiot. If I could just say no, I wouldn't have to go to 9,000 AA meetings. I'd just be at home saying no all the time.
That comes up pretty early on in the book, and it's an interesting thing to read the book as a Canadian, because I think that we get some context from it that perhaps American audiences wouldn't necessarily get. Like you, very early on in the book, talk about that your mom worked for the Prime Minister.
That's
your mom
right.
worked for Prime Minister Trudeau, and that you say that like he was the most charismatic man, had stolen your mother from you in the daytime.
Well, she was, you know, Alice and Janney in the West Wing. You know, that's what my mother was for Pierre Trudeau. And she was beginning to become a little bit of a celebrity herself, being seen with him a lot, you know. And I always have this image of this big ballroom, like this room like this big ballroom, and my mother walking in and taking all sort of the glory because she was beautiful and people just knew her. And I was like 5 feet behind her, and all I wanted was for her to turn around and, you know, focus on me and like be with me. You took me, and it's I want your company. I want you to help me. I'm a kid, you know. And she never really did that. And what I've realized as an older guy is that I still do that a little bit.
What do you mean?
It's and this is all part of addiction and all that stuff, but I still want the unavailable, the person who's not turning around. I still want that person to turn around and notice me. And that forms, as a guy who doesn't drink or do drugs, that's like a little bit of a drug for me when a girl goes, I don't want you. Oh, no, I do want you. It's a little bit of a drug for me because all I wanted was for her to turn around or mention me on the news or whatever.
Yeah.
And she, she didn't do anything wrong. She was just doing her job. But that's something that, from a young age, it hurt me.
And then there's this other Canadian, there's also the Justin Trudeau part of the book, which I really got a kick out of, which is that you grew up with the Prime Minister currently.
Yeah.
You may have beat him up.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's still unclear whether you beat him up or not.
The Murray brothers that I spoke about earlier, remember those guys?
Yeah.
I would like them to stand up.
Are they here?
Yeah. Brian, Chris, come on, you have to. Stand up.
Stand up for a second. One more time. Give him a round of applause.
Okay, so here's the deal with them. Those guys are my best friends since 3rd grade. And they and I started talking in this kind of interesting way. Maybe you're familiar with it. But we would say to each other, could that teacher be any meaner? Could I have more of a detention? And I took that way of speaking and made like $100 million off it. These two very nice guys, they did not do that. But they're nice about it, you know what I mean? You would expect somebody to be kind of mean about that, but they're just great, and I love you guys. And, the Murray brothers also were there when I first drank, so, fuck you.
And were they there when you potentially beat up the Prime Minister?
That's their story, is that I beat up Prime Minister Trudeau. And, it's possible. And it became a Twitter thing where I said it on Twitter, I guess, and he responded, yes, and wouldn't you want to punch Chandler in the face? And I think we should have another battle, is what he said. And I immediately wrote back, you have your own army. You win. Good luck in all your endeavors. Stop writing to me. Run your country. So I'm not sure if it happened.
Another Canadian who means a lot to you in more of like a path that you sort of started to follow and something you started to aspire to was Michael J. Fox.
Right.
He was not just like an actor you liked, but he sort of represented something you wanted to aspire to.
Yeah, Michael J. Fox, and I was young, I'd done a couple of plays in school, and Michael J. Fox was it, man. When I was in 9th grade, Michael J. Fox had just done Back to the Future, and there was smoke coming out of my ears. I was so jealous of this guy, right? And he had, at the time, the #1 TV show and the #1 movie at the same time. So he was huge. And I don't know anybody else who's done that except me.
You had that with the whole 9 yards. You had that with Friends.
The whole 9 yards out and Friends, of course, and they were #1 at the same time. So I thought that was pretty cool. And maybe only Canadians get to do that.
Yeah, they choose one Canadian every 30 years.
That's right.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
The next one is being born right now.
Yeah, I wish I was there for that.
Yeah, me too. So we'll get to Friends in a second, but before you get the role on Friends, you moved to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You go to school, you act in school, in plays, and next thing you know, you have an aptitude for acting. You start to get this attention for being an actor. You shoot a movie with River Phoenix. You're shooting a sitcom with Valerie Bertinelli. You're hanging out with this new kind of crew of buddies.
Yeah.
Hank Azaria is one of them.
You know who he is, the guy on Simpsons?
Yeah. And who were the other guys? Who were the...
David Pressman was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
I'll talk about him in a bit. And Craig Bierko,
Yeah.
who was the funniest guy. And I thought that I was the funniest guy. And I was just like a little second behind Craig Bierko. And he was a little better looking than me, and we all loved him but hated him because he would get all these jobs and stuff. You want me to tell that story now?
You tell whatever you want. Go ahead. Yeah.
I can speak freely?
Oh yeah. You don't. The prime minister's not here.
Okay.
So you can do whatever you want. That's fine.
I don't know. You may know this story. Do you know the story about Craig Bierko? No, you don't. Okay. So a pilot season in Los Angeles is a very important time for actors where they do all the new shows. So you get hired to be in a new show, and if they like it, it gets on the air, but you have to do a pilot first. So my business manager called me and said, "You have no money." And I said, "How about a little warning? What's going on?" And so I called my manager and I said, "I need money, you gotta give me a job right away." And the job that they got me was called LAX 2194, and it was about baggage handlers in the year 2194.
Did you hear the applause? Someone tried to applaud when
Someone
you said the
tried
name
to
of that?
applaud. Yeah,
Oh,
I've seen that.
Yeah.
And I wore a futuristic shirt, and there were little people wearing wigs, and they were the people in the futuristic people. Whatever, it was awful, but they paid me the money that I needed to drink more and eat more and all that stuff. So then a script called Friends Like Us started to make its way around the people. And I saw a character in it that was me. And we all know which character that was. And I was like, I am this guy. I am Chandler. You got to get me in to audition because I'll get it because he talks exactly like I do. And they said, we can't send you in. You're attached to the baggage handler show. And I kept trying. And a couple of my friends said, you're so much like this guy. Can I read this with you? And can you show me how to do it? And I did show them how to do it. And I was like, well, don't hit that word. Hit that word and you'll get it. And they got really close to getting the part based on that. So I was just miserable. I knew the show wasn't going to get picked up. I'm reading Friends Like Us. It's so good. It's character-driven. Courtney Cox is already in it. It's like Jim Burrows is directing it. It's got all this stuff. So Craig Bierko calls Hank Azaria and I and says, can you please come to meet me at this restaurant at 10 o'clock in the morning? I've just been offered 2 shows and I need your help to decide which. And my first inkling was, fuck you. I don't want to see your success and vote on it. So Hank and I both showed up. He had 2 scripts in his hand, Friends Like Us, and a show called Best Friends. That was the other show. Both directed by Jim Burrows, the best director in town. And we read through both scripts, and, I wanted to, but I'm not a jerk. So I said, you have to do Friends Like Us. And so did Hank. And then we went our separate ways. And Hank went to the gym, because he was always going to the gym. And Craig and I went to Trader Vic's, Fred Siegel, which is a clothing store. And this is back when people were using payphones. 1994, nobody had a phone. So he picked up the phone, the payphone, and called his agent with me 2 feet away from him and took the other show. And I said, see ya. And I raced home. And I was like, the part's still available. They don't have anybody. It starts Monday. Please, please, get me in. I'll get it. And somebody finally saw the baggage handler show. And it was not going to get picked up. Mostly because it was about baggage handlers. So I was what's called a safe second, which means their show's not going to get picked up, so we'll hire them for our show. And my manager called me and said, I got very good news for you. You're reading for Marta Kaufman, the executive producer of Friends, tomorrow morning. And I was like, oh my God, and I knew my life was going to change. And I went in there on a Wednesday and I read for Marta Kaufman and David Crane and Kevin Bright. Then on Thursday, I read for the producers. And then on Friday, I read for the network, which was the final thing. There's like 45 people in the room. And there were some other people reading for Chandler, but I knew this was my job. And I did it, and I did it in my way, and I got it. And then we started on Monday. That's how fast it all was. And I was the last actor hired in 1994, the final one. And then we started on Monday, and the rest is history. So you've seen it.
How much of you, when you say that character, you said when that character came up, it was me. It was already me. But then as you referenced earlier, you bring your style of speaking from you and your friends. Like, what do you bring of yourself to that character?
I mean, it really was. What Chandler was originally was supposed to be a sarcastic observer of everybody else's lives. That's what it said in the breakdown. So basically, Chandler had the final laugh line after a scene, and all I brought to it was the way that the Murrays and I spoke. That was the different way. And I had done 4 shows before that and tried to do it, and they were like, talk like a normal person. I was
That's
like,
not where the accent goes.
I think this might be funny. You might want to try it. And, I brought to it, there was a line somebody said something about genitalia being in somebody's house or something, and the line was, well, I don't want that guy in my refrigerator, near my refrigerator. And I said, well, I don't want that guy near my refrigerator. And they were like, whoa, what's that? Keep going. Why did you say that? Why did you say it that way? And so that was sort of where Chandler was born. And then he had to wear a lot of sweater vests.
Yeah, there was a lot of sweater vests, a lot of ska fashion back then, you know what I mean? Like, you're like a bass player in a ska band, like big...
Listen, say something else. I don't know what that is.
Hold on. Bass player in ska band did not work.
Yeah.
All
and
right,
have a pen when you're doing
that. Oh, yeah,
yeah.
I know. It's the CBC. We can't quite afford them.
I see.
Trudeau. So here's the thing.
I tried to help you.
How did Chandler change as the person playing with him starts to struggle with addiction more and more during the...
He didn't change. What was changing was me. I had a rule that I would never drink or do drugs while working because I had too much respect for the 5 people that I was working with. So I was never wasted when I was working. Also, it would totally turn off the timing and it would just be awful. But I did work extremely hungover. And, at one point I was shaking so much that if I was going to go from the bookshelf to the table, I'd have to kind of quickly do it and put my hand on the table so I wouldn't shake. And, it got that bad. But Chandler never changed. The writing never changed. It was my ability to pull off this addiction that I didn't understand. Years later, I was in a treatment center in a detox ward, and I was coming off of many, many, many drugs, and I picked up the Alcoholics Anonymous book for the first time in my life. And I read, drinkers think they're drinking to escape, but what they're really doing is trying to get over a disease they don't know they have. It's actually, they say they're trying to get over a mental disorder they don't know they have. And I went, that's me. I can't believe it. This book was written in 1939, and it's about me. It's about the guy who drove to the liquor store at 1:45 so he could drink alone. It's about all these habits. It's about why my reaction was different than the Murrays when we drank that day when I was 14. We were all 14. It separated me from the normal man. So it was a great day on the one hand. But on the other hand, it meant one day at a time, I have to stop drinking forever. And I thought, well, this is the only way I've ever enjoyed anything in the 20th century. And I have to give it up or, it's going to kill me. So I gave it up for a long period of time. And we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but the insanity of having another drink a couple of years later and starting this whole thing all over again was insane. I was insane. I am insane. But interestingly enough, only in this area. Like, I'm a pretty logical fella in every area but this one.
Yeah.
And I know logistically exactly what's going to happen, and I still do it. And I couldn't understand that. And just a brief lesson in alcoholism for you guys that don't know, and addiction, of course. It's a disease. That's the first thing I didn't know. In 1956, I think the American Medical Association said it was a disease. And it's a two-pronged disease. Two things happen to me and 10 million other people in the United States. It's an obsession of your mind. So what that means is you think of a martini, and then slowly but surely, it's the only thing you can think about. You can't think about anything else. I got to get a martini. I know I'm supposed to be over here working, but I got to get another martini. Martini. And then once you take that martini, you break the membrane of sobriety. And once you do that, the obsession is gone, but the allergy of your body, which is the second prong of the disease, takes over and says, oh, now we're drinking. I'm going to make you drink as much as you did last time and more. It's progressive, so I'm going to make you drink more than you did last time. And you can't stop. I could not stop unless I was locked away somewhere. And at times, I would call drug dealers and have drugs brought in to the place I was locked up in because I was desperate and begging for drugs because it's the only way I had to feel better. And I did not, it makes you forget, too. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful. So that thing that I read in the book, alcoholism, didn't care about that. And alcoholism did not care that I was on Friends. And alcoholism did not care about any of that shit. Alcoholism wants you alone, it wants you sick, and then it wants to kill you. In the book, I compare it to the Joker. Because the Joker just wants to see the whole world burn. And so does alcoholism and addiction. And it took over decades of my life. And I pray to you, if you worry that you're having this problem, or you know somebody that is, raise your hand, find somebody who's smarter than you about this, and talk to them. And be honest about it. Because the secrets are what kill us. As soon as it was pulled out of me by somebody the first time I admitted it. But I was taking 55 Vicodin a day. I weighed 128 pounds. I was on Friends, getting watched by 30 million people. And that's why I can't watch the show, because I was brutally thin. And being beaten down so badly by the disease. So I went to Hazelden. I went to my first rehab. I didn't really learn anything. I kind of just imitated Michael Keaton the whole time. So I was like, what, do I have a problem with alcohol? And I was placed in some kind of spiritual guy's office, and we talked a little bit. And as we were done talking, he turned around. He turned me around and said, "Just remember, it's not your fault." And I went, "What?" He said, "It's not your fault." And I went, "Say that again." "It's not your fault." And I said, "What do you mean it's not my fault? I'm the one who's doing it. What do you mean?" And he explained addiction and alcohol to me, and he saved my life. Because I then knew that it wasn't my fault, that I wasn't weaker. It wasn't my will that was screwed up. It was that I have this disease and I need to get help. And the thing that always makes me cry, and I hope I don't cry here, is that it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair.
It's not fair.
That I had to go through this disease while the other 5 didn't. They got everything that I got. But I had to fight this thing, and still have to fight this thing. So just to end this on a good note, there are people that will help you, and get their help. It doesn't go away. It never goes away. I love you too. I think it helps us not to know each other.
You also in the book talk about how you thought that. So there's a scene in the book where you pray to God, and I want to talk about the 2 times you pray to God in the book, but I want to talk about the first time.
Okay.
The first time you say something like, "If you make me famous," what is it?
So I was in my apartment and I read an article about somebody famous, and he was in trouble for doing something. And I said to myself, I was all alone, I said to myself, what does he care? He's famous. He doesn't care about this little thing. He's famous. The answer to everything is being famous. And then for the first time in my life, I knelt down and prayed. And that prayer was, please, God, make me famous. You can do anything you want to me. Just make me famous. 3 weeks later, I got friends, and God did not forget about the second part.
But what sticks out to me about that is just that. There's a couple of moments in the book where you go, I really thought that being famous, I thought that having the #1 TV show, I had everything I'd always wanted, and it wasn't, Matthew, it wasn't able to fill the holes. I think that was a powerful realization for you.
Yeah, I mean, I had the American dream happen to me. I got the great job. I was good at it. I bought a house. The house had a pool. I had the American dream, and I really, really liked it. Loved it for about 6 months, and then I walked in my house and went, "Oh man, this is not fixing this problem that I have. How is that possible?" And I wanted to finish the Craig Bierko story because it was really pivotal and it was important. So Craig Bierko, after he didn't get Friends, and Friends was on for 2 years and was a massive hit, Craig didn't speak to me for those 2 years. I would call him, he wouldn't return my calls, and he just didn't want to be my friend anymore. So 2 years into it, he called me up on the phone and said, "Can we meet? I'd like to talk with you." I said, "Of course, yes, great." So he came over to my apartment and he said, "I'm sorry that I have not called you in 2 years. I could not handle that you got rich and famous on a show that I turned down. We were both good enough to get that role." And I said, "Of course we were. But let me tell you something, pal. It doesn't do what we all thought it would do." And we were 24 years old having that conversation. And he didn't believe me, nor would anybody believe me. But it was true. That's why I said to him, I wanted to help him out. I wanted to say, it doesn't solve the problem. Jim Carrey did a really good quote a couple of years ago, a few years ago, and he said, "I want everybody to get all their dreams come true. Everybody. so that they could know that it's not the answer. And it's hard to, that's one of the main reasons I bought I didn't buy it, I wrote it.
I bought it.
You bought it.
I bought it.
Thank
Yeah.
You know, one of the main reasons I wrote the book was I wanted people to, understand that. And not many books have come from the side of the addict and, told the story from that side before. Certainly not somebody who's been on one of their favorite shows or whatever. And, that message is very powerful because I thought it would fix everything, and, it didn't. I still wanted to drink every day.
You talk in the book about how you were one of the first, if not the first, celebrity to be open about going to rehab during Friends, about needing to get help during Friends.
Yeah, that wasn't my choice, though. That was just magazines and stuff taking pictures of me and finding out, and I lost my anonymity that way. And at the time, I thought anonymity was pretty damn important, but I was the first kind of high-level celebrity to go into a rehab. So they were very interested in that. I was on the cover of everything, and it just made everything harder. On the other end, it made things easier because I couldn't exactly go to a bar and go, "Can I have a martini, please?" as I was on the covers of everything.
What does that do to you? I spent a lot of time in the past little while talking about how fame can be dehumanizing. How that when you become a famous person, some of your humanity is robbed from you. Most people in this audience, in fact, I'd say everybody in this audience, if they had a problem, they would be able to get help for that problem without having cameras in their face and without having people fucking screaming at them, asking them questions about, are you still drinking, or all this stuff while you're walking down the street. What does that do to you? What does that do to you when you're already struggling with this and you have this other layer to it, Matthew?
A really quick answer to that. It's fine when you're doing fine. And when you're not doing fine, it's one of the most awful things in the world because you have to lie and pretend that you're doing well, and you don't even understand why you have to do that. But the key thing is that the reality of I'm going to be famous and it's going to make me happy, is wrong. It does do some great things.
Yeah.
What you want is an on-off button. That's what you want. You want to be able to turn it off when you want to and turn it on when you do. And fellas, I will tell you that if you do get to play Chandler on TV, the women start to walk up to you.
Hold on, let me just write that.
Yeah.
That's okay, hold on. Play Chandler on, okay.
Yeah. I used to spend half my night trying to think of the line. What would the line be to go to the girl? And then I was like, oh, the girl's right here, hi.
It's lovely to hear you talk about the show because in the book you talk about how in the past you had a complicated relationship with looking back on Friends. And in the book you liken it to the way that Nirvana never played Smells Like Teen Spirit, or that Led Zeppelin didn't like playing Stairway to Heaven. They had a hit song, right, and they didn't like to play it on stage. Yeah. Are these two processes related? Like the coming to peace with that and talking to us so openly about the time on the show? And
yeah, I mean, a little bit, but I didn't watch the show and haven't watched the show because I could go drinking, opiates, drinking, cocaine. Like I could tell season by season by how I looked. And I don't think anybody else can, but I certainly could. And that's why I don't want to watch it, because that's what I see. That's what I noticed when I watch it. But I think I'm going to start to watch it because it really has been an incredible, first of all, it was an incredible ride, but it's been an incredible thing to watch it touch the hearts of different generations and like all these it's become this important, significant thing. And, I would watch that again. It was really funny and all the people were nice. And I've been too worried about this and I want to watch Friends too.
You start the book, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, and the first thing you do is declare, I should be dead. And then a few pages later, you ask yourself the question, Why am I alive?
Yeah.
I'm curious if writing the memoir helped you answer that question.
Yeah, definitely. The reason that book's any good is I was just setting out to help people. They say, I've heard, that if you're having anxiety, you have depression, one of the ways out of that is doing something creative. So I said, okay, and I started writing on my notes app in my phone. 2 thumbs. And
Economical, that's the way to do it. Yeah.
Eventually, but I'm faster that way than this. So I wrote about 140 pages that way over the next 10, 12 days, touching on all of these subjects, and then sent it out to my agent and manager, and they said, this is very good, but it needs to be 150 more pages. So I got depressed and thought, oh, I thought I was done. And then I switched over to an iPad, and I started really filling this out and making it, but my goal was always, when I wanted to stop, I was like, God, this is too much, it's too much, stop. I always went to, no matter how far down the scale I've gone, I'll be able to help somebody who's gone down that far too. So I kept going. And that's the only reason I kept going.
What does helping other people give you in your own journey then?
It is, I can't describe it. It's something spiritual. It fills your heart. You see the lights coming on for a new person who didn't understand. That guy didn't have the guy who said, it's not your fault. I said that to him. And then I saw this look of, relief that it wasn't his fault. And we started talking in a completely different way. And I get as much help from talking to 600 people as I do to one person. It gives me the juice, the same amount. And I think when I lay in this hospital bed for 5 months, I had to figure out, well, first of all, I was put on an ECMO machine. An ECMO machine does all your breathing and does all your heart work. It's a machine that does that. And it's what doctors and people call a Hail Mary. It never works. People put them on this machine and they die. But it works occasionally. And 5 people had an ECMO machine that night and the other 4 died. And I survived. And my parents were told that I had a 2% chance of making it through the night. So I'll have to live the rest of my life knowing that my parents heard those words. And when something like that happens, you'd think you'd be filled with gratitude, right?
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to be alive. That's not what it is. You don't feel that way. You feel pissed. You feel pissed off. It's like, why did this happen to me? And God, and I vomited into my respirator. And you talk to anybody in the medical profession and go, that guy's dead. There's no way that guy with that combination of things survived. And as I started to get better, we were told by doctors that I was so messed up down there that they couldn't even operate for another 1.5 years until everything was okay enough to go back in. And so I had to live my life that way, and with really unfortunate things happening. And I never thought I'd get to sit up here. I never thought it's crazy that I wrote a #1 bestseller, It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty good, man, pretty good. You said in the book, I think you have to have all your dreams come true to realize they're the wrong dreams. What are the
I probably stole from Jim Carrey, I guess.
What are the dreams now?
The dreams now, the best thing about me, bar none, is if somebody comes up to me and says, I can't stop drinking, can you help me? I can say yes and follow up and do it. That's the best thing. And I've said this for a long time. When I die, I don't want friends to be the first thing that's mentioned. I want that to be the first thing that's mentioned. And I'm going to live the rest of my life proving that.
Do you want to do some audience questions?
Yeah, you guys ask some questions.
Let's
answer
ask some
them.
questions. I'm done. I'm off the clock. Why don't we start with this one?
Okay.
All right. Do you have any favorite spots to visit in Toronto?
Going to Leaf games.
Sorry for the Leafs.
Yeah, yeah.
Habs fan, you know.
Well, you've had your time.
If your book had a soundtrack, what would it be?
Don't Give Up, which is a Peter Gabriel. Listen to this song when you get home. Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush, and it's just beautiful. I don't know if you've heard it. This is a long time ago, but it's beautiful. And it's saying don't give up. I mean, come on. I mean, how am I not going to like that? But the music video of that was just them hugging each other. And the camera just went around until the song was over. And it was so cool. And I love that. I've been writing, like when I sign the book, I always put don't give up there. Because you shouldn't give up. Or maybe you should. I don't know.
That's a less good inscription. Maybe you should give up.
Yeah.
Matthew Perry.
You actually should give up. Matthew Perry.
I waited. Maybe give up. It's very Rickles. Daria asks, what advice do you have for people who are trying to become sober?
Well, Daria, where are you? Daria? Hi, Daria. Just wanted you to get a little applause. Well, we've touched on this, which is don't keep it a secret. Raise your hand and say you're suffering. You are drinking and you can't stop. And then it's like the disease goes, well, if you're going to tell somebody about it, I'll go away for a while. And that's the way it works, but the disease always comes back. But that's my advice. Have it stop be a secret, raise your hand, ask for help. And when you start going to AA meetings, don't leave an AA meeting till you know which one is next. That's my big hint in AA.
Amanda asks, did you learn anything new about yourself through the process of writing this book?
Yeah, I learned how close I came to death and how often that happened and how I just never want to do it again.
Tiffany asks, how would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as somebody who lived well, loved well, was a seeker, and his paramount thing is that he wants to help people. That's what I want. But I think I'm saying that too much, but it's true.
Well, but I think that's a good way to wrap things up, because I guess what I wanted to say at the end was that you have already helped us so much. I read a lot of books. I have yet to see one as honest and truly vulnerable as this one. And I know it's also your way of helping us again. So thank you so much for it.
Thanks,
Matthew Perry, everybody.
All right.